Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. So let's shift
That's
now.
a good transition to reviews.
Yes,
absolutely.
yes. Let's talk about an interesting kind of incident that happened on Twitter, I guess,
Yes.
that a lot of people didn't notice. I linked to it, but I didn't highlight it in the newsletter on Wednesday.
So
what was it?
A woman by the name of Alex Friedman from Austin, Texas, tweeted. She's a blue check at Twitter. I don't know, what is a tweet still called a tweet?
It's not. We have to use the correct nomenclature. It's an X.
It still says tweet in my window. So Alex Friedman tweeted, I'll read to you. My server today told me that she gets $15 gift card for groceries and diapers for every positive review she receives on Yelp. Would be a real shame if people started leaving positive reviews for Christina, who works at De Nata Cantina, excuse me, in Austin. And then a little bit later, she noted that she counted and Christina already has 15 plus new reviews. I'm crying. I love you all. I hope she goes to work tomorrow and is so surprised, and I hope you have the best day ever. And
somebody at Yelp saw that.
Somebody at Yelp saw it, and Luther Lowe, Yelp's public presence and policy person in Washington, tweeted that soliciting reviews, especially from people who haven't experienced the business, is ultimately an attempt to deceive consumers. The business now has an alert on its Yelp listing giving some context that there was unusual activity alert. So I just find this very fascinating. One that
so let's explain what the unusual activity alert is for few people that may not.
It's a big exclamation point, and
it's a big scarlet letter warning sign
that the business received increased public attention, which often means people come to this page to post their views on the news. We don't take a stand one way or another, but we're going to stop all reviews going through. So at this point,
it's sort of neutral, but ultimately maybe negative.
It certainly impacts the business in the sense that who knows why or what, but people coming to it can't leave a review at Yelp. So it's several things. One, the hypocrisy of the Yelp statement that soliciting reviews is ultimately an attempt to deceive consumers is self-interested, holier than thou, horse pucky. I mean, it just isn't true. It isn't true if you look at it from a research point of view. It isn't true how businesses interact with consumers. The fact that this business, De Nata Cantina, incentivizes their staff to remind customers to leave reviews is totally appropriate. Been going on for decades, hundreds of years, since the dawn of capitalism, I do believe, maybe before that, is a way of spreading the word. So that's interesting to me that Yelp is like so self-righteous about this.
They've always taken the position that incentivized reviews are compromised and should not be allowed.
They're taking the position that soliciting reviews, in other words,
which is a slightly different point. So asking for a review versus offering a reward for review
is ultimately an attempt to deceive consumers, which is just it only serves Yelp. That statement serves no one else, and it's just very bizarre. Now, by the same token, Alex's behavior I find to be sort of virtue.
The person promoting
the idea that you should leave a review for Christina so she gets $15 from her business, because that's how the business is incentivizing her to mention reviews to clients, that people should leave it. And apparently, I don't know, people did leave reviews at Google and Yelp, a number of them, and Alex is just so happy she's crying for Christina, so now Christina can buy diapers. I mean, to me, that is armchair social activity, social, action. It is not real social action. If they really were concerned with Christina, they would fight for equitable pay for restaurant workers instead of tweeting out and then virtue signaling about how it's so important that Christina's making a living, or criticizing Yelp for living in a glass house, which they do, but not for this reason. So it just sort of reflects how society has taken reviews and is using them to different ends to satisfy some internal need to look good. and Yelp is using them to lecture people when neither seem to be true to me or appropriate ways of approaching this.
Well, I think that incentivizing reviews with monetary payments or some sort of quid pro quo is problematic. It doesn't always
Absolutely. Totally
compromise
problematic.
the review, but it is problematic and can compromise the review.
It's problematic because it generally creates higher review scores incentives than not. And since most consumers, at least in our research that we're doing, seem to only look at the rating and not dig into the review to notice that a given review is incentivized, it ends up skewing perceptions. And so direct incentives reviews, totally inappropriate. But this was not a direct incentive. That's
Soliciting
right.
is
The
different.
business wanted the employee to remember to ask for a review, to mention a review, and the employee chose to mention that she was incentivized to do so.
Well,
Again, she's soliciting reviews, but she's not incentivizing reviews.
Right. Well, so right. She's not paying people to write reviews, but she's getting some kickback if reviews mention her. Now,
a spiff is what it's called.
Yes, spiff. I would almost use that term. One of the ways to look at this, which is not the way we're talking about it, is that the business is doing a smart thing by enlisting their employees. I mean, we could say anything that we could have a cynical point of view and say, well, that business owner wants to look good, even though they should be paying their employees more or whatever. But just putting that point aside, the idea that they're trying to enlist their employees to advocate for the business is a smart approach, right?
Yes.
Your employees are your best salespeople. Whoever they are your best salespeople. Satisfied employees, happy employees are going to sell your business more effectively. So they're saying, hey, if you can remind customers to do a review, we'll give you this small reward. And there's a certain logic and a certain kind of smart strategy there. Now,
and there is even a strategy around incentivizing customers to give you a review, paying the $15 directly to them or whatever. And it's not illegal to do so. It's against Google's terms of service. It's against Yelp's terms of service. But the FTC says it's totally legitimate behavior, which as long as it is disclosed as prominently as the review and in the same media as the review. So if the review is video, it has to be disclosed in the video. If the review is written, it has to be disclosed. Now, I disagree with the FTC. I believe that since people only look at the ratings and since incentives skew reviews more positive as opposed to just soliciting, which tends to skew reviews more honestly, I believe that incentives of any form on consumer reviews shouldn't be allowed. I think they should be allowed in the context of testimonials or in endorsements, but not with consumer reviews. And I think the FTC has made an error in that.
So in this particular context, you would not disqualify the business from giving the employee, the server, an incentive to solicit the review. That would not run afoul of your policy.
I think it's totally rational behavior on the part of the business and the part of the employee. And the employees learn, as you point out, representing the business and has every right, regardless of what Yelp says,
the
to
challenge,
solicit the review.
The challenge becomes...
It's a subtle distinction. It's a nuanced sort of.
So the challenge happens when you get the intervention of a, whatever review whisperer, review influencer. This woman, Alex, it's a woman, right? Alex.
Yes, it's a
Friedman. Yeah. When you get some third party who comes in and says, "Hey, everybody, you need to write a bunch of reviews for this particular waitress because she's going to get a benefit for that," that's when the problem happens. In the absence of that, maybe everything would have been fine, but beyond exposing it to Yelp, the problem is that you get a lot of people who just want to do, what they perceive to be a good deed, help out this woman because they feel empathy for her, and they've never been to the business. And so that's where the problem occurs, and that's what has to be stopped. And in fairness to Yelp, at least they have been consistent in their position and their effort to keep incentivized reviews off the platform.
Yes, and I agree with them that people who haven't been experienced in business should not be reviewing them. But the fact that they have to put a blanket penalty on the business or a blanket notice on the business and stop taking all reviews is also reflections on Yelp's unsophisticated filtering system.
Yeah.
They should be able to tell who has done business with this business and who hasn't, or who is likely to have done business with this business and who hasn't. And they should be able to filter out individual reviews. And much like their position on filtered reviews, where they typically filter all newbies that are positive, but don't filter newbies that are negative. Again, very unsophisticated filtering, which tends to skew reviews negative on
because
Yelp.
negative reviews. I mean, on balance, Yelp's reviews are positive, but the assumption.
Well, they're usually a half or 3/4 of a point lower than any other site
Google.
on the
Yeah,
internet.
that's true.
And it's because they filter out more first-time positive reviews.
Well, the operating assumption there is that negative reviews have more credibility than positive reviews, which is
a flawed assumption, right? Yeah. So this reflects badly on Yelp in several ways. The big one being that they're sanctimonious jerks. The second one being that they obviously have low quality filtering, and I think and it doesn't reflect all that well on Alex Friedman either. From where I sit, she is, like I said, doing what I call virtue signaling. She really
it's a lazy.
This is not the way to do it.
It's lazy, and she thought she was doing a nice thing.
Right.
I'm having a brain freeze here. I wanted to go out on. Oh yes.
Bright logo.
Okay. No.
Something before Bright logo. Right?
No. What are we going to say about Bright logo?
The conference.
Yeah. Yes. No. Okay. We're all right. Let me say what I'm going to say, and then you can say what you were going to say. So we're gonna be speaking at Bright Local's local SEO for Good, David, Mike, and me, and we'll be talking about some of the user research that we've been doing in different verticals and what we're seeing, and just as a little preview of that, and something that's relevant to this conversation about reviews is that we're seeing a lot more nuanced behavior by vertical. And in terms of how people are interacting with the search results than what the conventional wisdom suggests, right? And so, you want to show up for that because I think it'll be very interesting. And one of the things that we're seeing, just as a little preview, is that people don't really read reviews. Bright Local itself, that does this local review survey annually, talks about how many reviews do you need and minimum scores and, people sort of scrutinizing reviews. And there's this sense that people are reading the most recent reviews and reading a certain threshold of reviews to make a determination about whether to buy from a business. That may be true in certain high consideration cases, but in many cases, people are not reading reviews. They're just
look at aggregates and take them very seriously. They heavily rely on star ratings. Right.
They are taking those very seriously, and they are using that as a primary decision making criterion, but they are not doing any in-depth investigation of reviews or trying to assess their veracity or really much about them. Now, in isolated cases, you'll find that people do that. In high consideration cases, YMYL, people will do that kind of thing. But what we're seeing now from hundreds of user testing videos is that people are not really doing any investigation of the reviews beyond looking at the aggregate score, which I think is pretty fascinating. And there are other things like that we'll be talking about.
Right. So just to reemphasize, it's called Local SEO for Good Live. It's August 30th and 31st, and I think it's $25 a ticket. It's 2 days.
Charitable contribution.
Right. And that money is being redistributed to charities of choice of the speakers. And the speakers include Greg Gifford and Joy Hawkins, Amanda Jordan, Ileda Celis, Crystal Carter, Crystal Tang, Andy Simpson, Amy Thompson.
Yeah, it's a great lineup of people in local.
Right. So it should be a good week, and we would encourage you to join us.
To show up.
And like Greg said, we will be reviewing some unpublished consumer behavior research.
Exactly. So thanks again for listening. Tell your friends about the Near Memo, and spread the word about the Near Media newsletter coming to you 3 times a week. And we will see you next time.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.